Hey everyone, this is Phil, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about shoulder transitions and offside shooting. Being able to shoot from your offside is a critical skill for airsofters to be familiar with. You know, we've said this before, but airsoft is a game of angles. And if you're not able to effectively engage from one side of a piece of cover, then either you're not utilizing about half of the cover that's available to you, or you're exposing yourself to greater risk by overexposing yourself on one side of the piece of cover. So today, we're going to be talking about offside shooting, how to learn how to transition your shoulders and to shoot from your offside, and we'll go over some tips and tricks to help you get comfortable. So let's get to it. First off, if you've never shot from your offside before, it's going to feel weird. There's no getting around it. Kind of like trying to tie your shoelaces the other way, you know what I mean? Or trying to learn how to throw a ball with your other hand. It's certainly not impossible, but it does take practice. And in fact, you can quickly gain a very good level of proficiency with offside shooting with just a little bit of practice. Now that being said, don't try to learn how to offside shoot by just going to a game and playing that entire game on your offside with no practice. You likely won't have a lot of success. Ask me how I know. There are two key components to offside shooting. Number one is manipulating your airsoft replica into an offside shooting position, sometimes called shoulder transition or bumping shoulders. And number two, actually acquiring a sight picture and shooting from your offside. Now you're going to need to learn how to do both, but as a beginner, for our money, it's best that you start with the last one. Start by doing ready ups from your offside without worrying about learning how to transition your shoulders at the same time. Doing ready ups from your offside with your airsoft replica already in position allows you to focus on the mechanisms of offside shooting, which is shouldering the replica, bringing your sight up on target, acquiring a sight picture, manipulating the safety if you're doing that, and then squeezing the trigger. Now for this, I recommend that you actually put on your airsoft kit because numerous things can impact the way you do a ready up when you're on the field. So looking at my kit, you can notice a couple of things that might get in the way of doing my offside ready up. Firstly, you've got my speaker mic here on my shoulder that might impact how I do my ready up, how I shoulder. You also know that I'm wearing ear pro, and the ear pro might get in the way when I'm trying to get a good sight picture, for example. So this is why it's really important to put on your kit when you're doing this particular drill. For you, it could be buckles on your kit, it could be straps, it could be some people who inexplicably like to keep a knife, a dummy training knife on their shoulder. Whatever it is, all of that will impact the way that your ready up actually proceeds. So it's important to wear the kit. Obviously, I'm not wearing camo. That's not really that essential, but I am wearing gloves because this is what I'm going to be wearing during a game. And so this is how I'm going to practice. Additionally, you may want to consider whether you want to wear eye pro or whether you want to wear face pro. Obviously, if you're going to be doing shooting as opposed to dry firing, you're going to want to wear eye pro. And the same thing with your face pro. If you have face protection that you think will impact your cheek weld, then you should wear that while you're doing your drills. So now you're going to start by doing your ready ups on your offside. I've got my replica ready to go here. So what you want to try and do is, as best you can, mirror your shooting stance from your strong side to your offside. So if you shoot straight forward, that's great. If you shoot bladed, make sure you switch your feet. This isn't as big of a deal as you might think because we know from the airsoft field, it's very, very rare that we'll be in a perfect shooting position during the game. But by doing this, you help build a little bit of consistency into your practice. Ideally, you'll be able to complete these drills in a place where you can actually fire your airsoft replica, but we recognize that for many of us practicing airsoft at home, this is just not a possibility. And dry firing is still a very good exercise to get accustomed to the manipulation and acquiring the sight picture on your offside. The only thing you're not going to be able to work on is the actual accuracy piece of offside shooting. So you're going to want to take your time and do these slowly at first. There's no need to rush this. In fact, you need to start slow and get comfortable before you can speed up. Otherwise, it's going to be sloppy and you're going to building training scars that are not going to help you in the long term. So from your offside position, all you're going to do is shoulder, and just like your regular ready ups, you are going to bring your rifle up on target, acquire a sight picture, manipulate the safety, and squeeze the trigger. Once you have a sight picture, then put the safety back on and come back down to your ready position. That is a ready up exactly the same way as on your strong side. You're just doing it on your offside. When you're on your offside, it's also worth taking the time to do a couple of reloads because it may work differently for you depending on what type of replica you're using. So in my case, I'm using like an M4 style replica. And so the mag release is only on one side of the receiver. It's right here. So when I do a reload on this side, what I need to do is push that button in with my thumb and extract the mag. Now, this isn't particularly difficult, but the first time you do it, it's a little bit weird. So you want to make sure that you're taking your time in your practice to incorporate a couple of reloads. Once you get comfortable with offside ready-ups, then, and only then, do you want to start incorporating switching shoulders. I said earlier that this is sometimes called shoulder transitions or bumping shoulders, but in truth, bumping and transitions have one key difference. In a traditional shoulder transition, both your shoulder transitions as well as your hands, while in a bump, you only switch the stock from one shoulder to the other. Bumping shoulders is typically used in a situation where you need to be able to engage from your offside in a hurry. Perhaps there's a threat on the field that you were just noticing and you want to maximize your cover availability while also being able to return fire. So bumping shoulders will be an effective way of doing that in that particular situation. When the situation and time allows it, the next thing that you can do is go from a bump to transitioning your hands into a full shoulder transition. This is going to be much more comfortable and much more sustainable for the long term. What you may find is that staying bumped for long periods of time is not super comfortable, both because of the way that your hands are positioned, as well as whether it's easy or hard for you to actually manipulate your safety, if that's something that is part of your practice in that position. Either way, you'll find that the bump is typically more of a hasty fighting position compared to a traditional shoulder transition. So just to demonstrate, to bump my shoulders, all I will do is simply take my stock, put it on my other shoulder, and continue engaging. From this position, I can acquire a sight picture, and I still provide a minimal profile on my offside. Then if I want to transition, what I will simply do is swap my hands. And from this position, this is much more comfortable for me. I can maintain this position for a long period of time. It's easy for me to manipulate my airsoft replica. And whenever I'm ready to move on, I can swiftly bump my shoulder back, swap my hands, and I'm good to go. Now, depending on your particular body type as well as the replica that you're using, you may find that bumping shoulders is not super comfortable and not super effective for you. I've mentioned in the past, I'm pretty short, a short king, as you might say, and as a consequence of that, my wingspan is not very large. I can still bump shoulders as you've seen me do previously, but it's not super comfortable. And in truth, when I'm in a game, I will almost never bump my shoulders without also transitioning my hands. This is because that's what's comfortable for me, and that's what works for me. If you compare that to someone on the team like Cal, who's a much taller guy, he has no trouble bumping shoulders, and it's something that he finds extremely effective. So when you're practicing, it's very important to practice both to see what works best for you. Now, I have some video that I'm going to show of me learning how to bump shoulders initially, and it was a nightmare. It's important to stick with it so that you're able to make that determination for yourself, and don't do that in a hasty sort of way, just trying it once or twice and saying, oh, well, that doesn't work for me, I'm moving on. You really need to give it the college try to see if it's going to work and be effective for you. So one important aspect that can't go unmentioned is the sling. We've said it before, we'll say it again. A sling is an essential piece of kit for airsoft. Not just because it holds your replica in place like I'm doing right now, but because it also is a shooting aid. So you're gonna be running a sling, and the way that you run your sling will impact how you can actually transition shoulders. So depending on what type of sling you're using, whether it's a 1-point sling or 2-point sling, or God forbid, a 3-point sling, and also where it's attached on your rifle and how it's attached will dictate how you actually do your transition. So for instance, when we first started doing shoulder transitions, we were largely using 1-point slings. And in that setup, what we would have to do is bring the stock over the sling and rotate it over our shoulder in order to complete the transition. That was with a 1-point sling. With a 2-point sling, things are pretty different. And when it comes to bumping shoulders, it's even different still. So what I've found is effective with a 2-point sling is to actually, instead of going over the sling, going under the sling. So taking the stock and running it over and just bringing it just like that. Very quick and easy, right? It's very easy for me to shoulder my replica in this way, and then to bring it over, it's nice and clear. Now you can still do it this way, but it's a lot more complicated. I find it's a lot more streamlined for me to just run it right under the sling. It's also worth noting that I do have an ASAP plate on the bottom, which allows my sling to rotate from one side to the other. Not so on the front, it's just an RSA mount on the front. As a final tip here, if you are using an adjustable 2-point sling like I'm using right now, so this is a Faro Concept Slingster, it took me way too long to learn that I should keep it slacked out all the time. So previously what I would often do is run it as tight as I could because I found this was the most comfortable to carry during games. And so I'd come up to a piece of cover and I would engage, I would start shooting, and then I would know that I need to go to the other side. So what I would do is I would slack out my sling, I would transition my shoulders, I'd get in position, right? I would shoot, 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 shoot. When I was done, I would transition back, I would come here, and I would draw my sling in and come back. And that was okay, like I was fairly proficient at it, but someone pointed out to me, and they were right, that why would I just not keep my sling slacked out all the time? So if you are using an adjustable 2-point sling, my tip for you is make sure that you're keeping your sling slacked out anytime that you're playing, and only cinch it in when you need to have it cinched in. Perhaps you're trying to manipulate something during the game, like an objective, a flag, something like that, or you're in a rest position where you're not going to be engaged. That way, whenever you need to transition, if you need to do that quickly, you can just quickly bump your shoulders, engage, and then come back. If my sling were tightened, if my sling were all the way in, I would not be able to bump shoulders. It's way too tight. So if you look here, like I can't actually physically bring this over, like it gets stuck in the middle of my chest, right? So I need to have it slacked out. So the best practice is just keep your sling slacked out anytime that you're playing, and then only tighten it when you need to, as opposed to the reverse. So one very effective way to roll all of these concepts up into one airsoft drill is to start by doing a ready up on your strong side, transitioning shoulders either with a full transition or with a bump, your choice, and then doing a ready up on your offside. Then you transition back, you do a ready up, and then you transition back with either a shoulder transition or a bump, whichever one you didn't do last time, then do a ready up on that side. And you will repeat this over and over, slowly at first, very slowly, to get comfortable and gradually increase the speed. You can do this dry fire, of course, but it's going to be more effective if you can also shoot. That way you can also work on your accuracy at the same time as you're working on your proficiency on offside shooting. So let's do a demo of this drill. I'm going to start in the high ready position here. I'm going to come up, safety off, acquire a sight picture, squeeze the trigger, safety on, transition my shoulders, come back down. I'm bumped, I'm going to come up, safety off, acquire a sight picture, squeeze the trigger, safety on, come back over, come back down. Then I'm going to come up, safety off, acquire a sight picture, squeeze trigger, safety on, come back down, transition my shoulders, transition my hands, come down, up, safety off, acquire a sight picture, safety on, transition my shoulders back, come back, and come back down. You can do this as many times as is required for you to get comfortable, but again, you want to start slowly. You don't need to go as fast as I was going, which, to be honest, is not actually that fast, and then gradually get faster. One final tricky part to all of this is that when you start doing it, it is not going to feel natural. It's going to feel weird, and in some cases, you might not even know if you're doing it correctly. When I first started to learn how to bump shoulders, it didn't feel natural, and I thought, this is really not going to be possible for me. I'm too short, my arms are too short, it's not going to work. But you really need to stick with it. Once I started doing it correctly, once I learned the right sling technique, it started to feel more natural, more possible. And the reality is that offside shooting, shoulder transitions, and bumping is possible for the vast majority of airsofters out there. So even if it doesn't feel natural to you, you really need to stick to it. The great thing is once you start practicing, it will start to feel natural very, very quickly. When we first started offside shooting, within several weeks, we were already orders of magnitude better than we were before. And it really feels like you almost unlocked a cheat code for the game, because now you're able to exploit parts of the field that you didn't know were possible for you to exploit before. You're shooting people from places where they don't expect you to come out, and it's tremendously effective at helping you stay in the game longer because you're exposing yourself a lot less if you do engage from those offside pieces of cover. In any event, it is very, very important for you to give this skill a fair shot, because although it does feel kind of weird at first, it'll feel natural very quickly, and the benefit that you will get is going to be huge. It's an absolutely critical skill for all airsofters to be familiar with. So that's it for our video on offside shooting and shoulder transitions. We hope you learned something, and we hope that this encourages you to give practicing offside shooting a try at home so that you can give it a shot at your next airsoft game. If you're looking to support the channel, there's a few different things that you can do. You can leave this video a like, you can make sure to subscribe, but also we do have a merch store where you can pick up a variety of different shirt designs, including this one, as well as our Discord community server patch. So our Discord community is very active, and we have members from all around the world, and we now sell a Discord global community patch with one of the designs that was created and voted on by the community. You can buy this patch for $15 Canadian, flat shipping anywhere in the world. It's $15 Canadian, whatever that works out to your currency. And we've sold them all around the world, including Slovenia, Belgium, and even as far as Australia. So these are available in limited quantities and for a limited time. And if you want to pick up yours, the link is in the description below. It does help us a tremendous amount. So thank you so much for watching this video. We hope you learned something, and we'll see you next time.